lines, sorting through the media bias, exposing the propaganda, and challenging you to use your brain. It's time to tap into the truth.
Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed time to tap into the truth. Welcome to tonight's broadcast. Hope you've had a great day wherever you are. This is, of course, your host, Tim Tapp, coming to you live from historic Roane County, Tennessee. It has indeed been a busy news week, so much so that it's very hard actually to keep up with all of the news stories that you really should be paying attention to. Unfortunately, the explosion of the distraction story of Phil Robinson and his indefinite hiatus from the Duck Dynasty show, according to A&E, has just about everybody in the country, especially conservatives, Christians, and the liberal pundits who want to fire back, all distracted from a ton of stories. Now, in my mind, one of the biggest things that happened this past week was this so-called bipartisan budget deal. And the reason why it's one of the biggest stories of the week is because we have a serious situation going on with our veterans as a result of this deal. But before we get into that, we need to touch on a few other things. Today's main topics is going to be the military veterans and the pension cut they are now facing. We're going to talk about why I'm very concerned about this, beyond just the obvious. But there's a couple of other things that we really need to take a look at that are news and noteworthy. Not the least of which happens to be the fact that GM's CEO made news this past week. How did he make news? Excuse me. Well, basically, he's saying GM shouldn't repay the $10 billion in the bailout. Now, it is disconcerting, to say the least, but here's the deal. The General Motors bailout may have cost the government $10 billion, but GM CEO Dan Akerson rejects any suggestion that the company should compensate for the losses. He says that Treasury officials took the same risk assumed by anyone who purchases stock. Quote, I would not accept the premise that this was a bad deal, Akerson said during a question and answer session at the National Press Club in Washington. He also went on to say that the government's $49.5 billion aid to GM helped save billions of dollars in tax revenue and government social services. Say, reasonable argument for a person that's looking for excuses. Akerson spoke in the wake of Treasury announcement last week that it's sold its last shares in GM, and Akerson's decision to retire in January. Now, the automaker's board of directors has named Mary Barra, the company's first woman CEO, to succeed Akerson. The speech also came as GM's announced that it is investing $1.2 billion in 5 U.S. plants, which Akerson said is a recognition that after 15 straight profitable quarters, the automaker can rest on its success. Oh, that it can't rest on its success, excuse me. Quote, we are in a capital-intensive business that demands steady and significant investment. Akerson also said, as he discussed many of the changes that had to be made to the automaker's corporate structure after exiting a, quote, quick rinse bankruptcy in 2009. Ackerson said that it fell to him and his team to restore GM's good name, transform operations, and put quality and the customer back at the center of the company's decision-making, a process he called the biggest cultural change we've been able to infuse into the new GM. He said GM's bloated and overtly complex operations have been streamlined. Products are better, and, with the government's help, a crushing debt was reduced. He went on to say, "We've been trying to fix the airplane while in the air." Ackerson said that GM repaid all the debt issued by the government beginning in December of 2008, when George W. Bush was still president, and extended it into the first year of Barack Obama's presidency. He added that it was the Treasury's decision, though one he clearly supported, to take an ownership stake in the form of company shares. Asked whether GM should pay the difference between the amount the government provided the company and the return from the sale of the shares, Ackerson said the die was cast. He said that the Treasury, when it decided to take shares, made their decision. Now, for GM to make up for any shortfall could result in lawsuits from other shareholders. Those investors expect the company to resume paying a dividend for the first time since it exited bankruptcy back in July of 2009. He also defended the deal as one that saved millions of jobs, saying, net, it was a positive for the U.S. economy. Now, it will be up to Barria to continue GM's success. This news that came this past Monday that the automaker is upgrading and expanding factories in Flint, Detroit, Hamtramck, and Romulus, as well as others in Toledo, Ohio, and Bedford, Indiana, was meant to demonstrate that momentum. Quote, "This will bring the 4-year total of investments in our U.S. plants to more than $10 billion. Ackerson also said that about 7,500 people already work in those 5 plants, and today's announcement will create or retain more than 1,100 jobs. Excuse me again. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have heard the phrase created or saved in relationship to jobs enough in the last few years that I start becoming a little skeptical about what the numbers really mean. In truth, if you want the markets to work the way they're supposed to, and if you're a believer in the stock market, which, for an economy like ours, it is, significant that it be permitted to work properly rather than so much government interference, it's hard to argue with Ackerson's assessment that it's really not up to General Motors to make up the difference in the cost of the shares. They really would be opening themselves up to lawsuits. Equal treatment is expected, and financial law, stock law, fiduciary responsibility, these are important for our economy, period. What he fails to address is the fact that the Obama administration, under the direction of Barry himself, already ignored bankruptcy law in creating this deal in the first place. The laws that have existed and do continue to exist tend to mean very little for this obviously lawless president. And if you have any questions, if you happen to be a liberal and you're upset by the fact that I'm referring to him as lawless, Well, there's not much I can do to help you, but it's no coincidence that in this past week that there have been at least 3 separate federal judges that essentially said the Obama administration has been behaving in a lawless fashion. There's no question. These guys have no respect. What does it really mean? It demonstrates exactly why the federal government should not be in the business of trying to pick winners or losers. Why they should not be in the business of investing the people's money into the private sector, because they don't understand how the private sector works. If there's any of them that do, well, they still hate it so much they want it destroyed. They want an outcry of Americans to be upset at this CEO so that they can demand a payback, which would then in turn stop the forward momentum that GM currently has, if in fact they actually do. I don't have a problem with GM, but I do think that GM should have underwent standard bankruptcy practices. They would have been forced to make deeper cuts, leaner cuts, and unfortunately, pet projects supported by this particular administration may have been forced into hiatus, if not permanently shelved. You know, things like the 100% electrics, the stuff that no one was buying. If GM is in fact moving forward and making positive gains, and if you look at their numbers, there's no reason to think that they're not, then it's because they had to refocus their business to a model that focused on customer needs, not government desires. This administration forced its way in, ignored the law, and now, in all honesty, it has the authority to ignore the law again. Or at least they think they do. Until somebody challenges them in court and some judge stands up and says, this should have never happened in the first place, so no, we're not going to allow this. They're going to continue to operate as if, well, I hate to use the terminology, but it seems very accurate, as long as they continue to act like dictators. Let's move on, shall we? Another big story, and it's big because of what it represents, has also been very moot. On the Blog Talk version of the show, I do a segment called Headlines You May Have Missed. This story, big enough, a lot of people are talking about it. It even got coverage in the Blaze, but it's still getting so little mainstream media coverage. I mean, there's been a little. Don't get me wrong. This is still in the running to make the Headlines You May Have Missed segment. The EPA's global warming expert, its highest paid employee, avoided work for 13 years by pretending, get this, that he was a CIA agent. You know, it sounds like an excuse you might have seen on the old TV show Three's Company. Yes, we're with the CIA. At any rate, he is former now, he has been relieved of his responsibilities, a former Environmental Protection Agency employee and, quote, top global warming expert, will be sentenced Wednesday. Now, that happened this past week. There's a follow-up. But he pled guilty to defrauding taxpayers of nearly $1 million in a wild scheme dating back at least to the year 2000. John C. Beal, 65, in a, quote, crime of massive proportions, avoided doing his real job for more than a decade by telling his supervisors that he was an undercover CIA agent. Now, NBC News reported, citing federal prosecutors, that he pled guilty in September. Federal authorities are now requesting that Bill serve at least 30 months in federal prison, saying his historic lies are offensive to CIA agents who actually do covert missions. EPA Assistant Inspector General Patrick Sullivan, who headed the investigation into Bill's fraud, was shocked with what he found when he started digging into the situation back in February of 2012. He's quoted as having said, "I thought, oh my God, how could this possibly have happened in this agency? I've worked for the government for 35 years. I've never seen a situation like this." Now, there's a couple of things that pop into my head at this point right off the bat. Number one, if you are a CIA agent, why would you look for a cover as an EPA agent? CIA is not supposed to operate domestically. The EPA has no authority outside of our shores. Well, outside of our territories too, I suppose, but doesn't seem like a very plausible cover for a CIA agent. And, just throwing it out there for your thoughts, for your benefit, doesn't it kind of defeat the purpose of being undercover if you're going to tell people about it? Just saying. So, how did Bill manage to get away with this deception for so long? Did no one think to double-check his CIA claims? Well, evidently, at least according to the federal prosecutors, nope. Nobody in the EPA was interested, smart enough, or concerned enough to bother. It didn't matter. He was into the global warming phenomenon, helping them to extend their protection authority. So he was doing what they needed him to do, even if it was on such a rare occasion, so why question it? Bill was enabled because top officials failed to verify his stories or even question the hundreds of thousands of dollars given to him in bonuses and travel expenses. Now, before he retired in 2011, Bill was earning an annual salary of, get this, $206,000 plus bonuses. More than the salaries of his immediate boss and EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy. At least that according to the official documents. The former EPA official often skipped going to work, once going 18 months straight without ever setting foot in his office by telling his supervisors, including McCarthy, that he was doing covert work for the CIA. During a 6-month stretch, when he didn't go in, he told supervisors he was needed in Pakistan because the Taliban was torturing his CIA replacement. Due to recent events that you have probably read about, I'm in Pakistan. This was from a note that Bill wrote to McCarthy back in December 18th, 2010. This actually was from an email. He continued saying, got the call Thursday, left Friday, hope to be back for Christmas. Ho, ho, ho. Now, Bill, of course, had absolutely no connection whatsoever to the CIA, other than maybe seeing a TV show about the CIA at some point. For all the time that he told the supervisors he was doing covert work for the CIA, he was really spending time at his vacation house on Cape Cod. Or, in some cases, he was doing chores around his house in Northern Virginia. Just hanging out. Extended vacation time. The CIA has no record of him ever walking through the door, let alone being contract or actually being employed. Bill once told supervisors that he needed a handicap parking space at EPA headquarters because he suffered from malaria contracted during a tour of duty in Vietnam. Bill, who got the handicap parking space, doesn't have malaria, and he never served in Vietnam. Now, investigators eventually became interested in Bill's supposed relationship with the CIA after he retired. And that was back in September of 2011. That is when investigators became interested after they learned he was still drawing a paycheck from the EPA about a year and a half after he supposedly left. Oddly enough, top EPA officials who were present at the retirement gala for the fake CIA operative didn't find out until much later that Bill was still being paid nearly 2 years after leaving. Bill initially tried to brush investigators aside by telling them his relationship with the CIA was classified. Translation: I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you. They persisted. These investigators, they're top-notch. Bill eventually confessed. He had to confess. You couldn't find out from the CIA. It seems like one phone call takes care of that. He apparently didn't show much remorse either. Bill's defense team hoped to reduce his sentence by emphasizing that, quote, he had done admirable work. And this supposedly included his part in rewriting the Clean Air Act in 1990 and leading the EPA delegations to the United Nations conferences on global warming in 2000 and 2001. Now, McCarthy defended herself by taking credit for uncovering the fraud while she was head of the Office of Air and Radiation. The EPA has worked in condition and then in coordination with its Inspector General and the U.S. Attorney's Office. The agency has put in place additional safeguards to help protect against fraud and abuse related to employee time and attendance. Most places I work, it's called a time clock. It does a lot to stop that kind of thing. And in the modern computer age, not only are they pretty cheap, they're easy to set up and you can do it yourself. You don't even have to get involved with a whole lot of stuff here. Really, a little bit of software, one dedicated server, you're good to go. Our government, top notch, all the way. Going to take a quick break right about now. We're just a little bit past the halfway point. When we come back, we are going to focus on this budget deal. We already touched a little bit earlier this week on how it's not necessarily a done deal, because even though it has passed the House and the Senate and signed by the President, before it really can go in place to help avoid government shutdown, which is what everybody's hoping. Everybody's afraid of the government shutting down. They've got to work their way through several subcommittees on appropriations. Anyway, gonna take that quick break right now, and when we get back, we'll talk about it. Our military veterans, according to the House Democrats, they just haven't done enough. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Tap Into the Truth. Check us out at tapintothetruth.com for our latest blog posts and for links to all of our past broadcasts. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and to follow us on Twitter. That's Tap Into the Truth, right here on Spreaker Radio. Yes, that's right, Tap Into the Truth. Do check us out at tapintothetruth.com. If you are interested whatsoever in possibly starting your own website, or if you have a website but you're looking for a new host, think about iPage. And after you think about iPage, if you go to Tap Into the Truth and hit one of our banner ads for them and go that route, I would appreciate it. It would help to pay for this show and help to bring upgrades to the show and our website and all these other wonderful things that we're trying to do in an attempt to bring to you not only the news, but digging a little bit deeper and, of course, offering my fine expert opinion on said topics. While we're on the topic of checking out Tap Into the Truth, do please follow us on Twitter. Check us out on Facebook as well. And, of course, if you're looking for alternative ways of catching the show on podcasts, we are available on iTunes. We are also available on Stitcher.com and at TuneIn.com. As we were talking about alternatives, if you're looking for a social media alternative to Facebook, you've got a couple of options. Option number one, if you are a Tea Party conservative, then I highly recommend you check out teapartycommunity.com if you haven't already. You can find me active there along with several other die-hard Tea Party types. And, of course, if you're not one of those, please stay away. If you're not exactly a Tea Party person, but you do consider yourself to be a patriot, then you've heard me talk about patriotspace.com as well. Well, my friends of the show, my personal friend, Dr. Sharon Schutz, they've made a move, and the Lady Patriots have taken over patriotspace.com, and it is now ladypatriotspace.com. Go figure. But, of course, they are a social media site. They are an alternative to Facebook. If you consider yourself to be a patriot and you like the political side of things, it's a perfect location for you. They're still in a fairly fledgling place, so you got an opportunity to be still among some of the first members. You'll find me as an active member there as well. And one of the great opportunities you have there is the fact that you'll get to be around people that you can discuss the political topics with. You get to make new friends from across the country, get in touch with like-minded folks, and even some folks that may not necessarily be like-minded, but you might find they have a good point or two. You do not have to be a lady to be part of a ladypatriotspace.com. They do accept gentlemen patriots and student patriots, which is general neutral. Doesn't matter what gender you are. If you're a student, they'd love to have you there too. Surprise, surprise. At any rate, with all that having been said, let's get to today's topic, shall we? Excuse me again. I just can't seem to shake this cough. Here's my problem, and it really is just this simple. While this Duck Dynasty distraction is going on, and we're going to be talking about this in depth. We talked about it a little bit in the last broadcast here. We're going to be talking about it in depth this Sunday on the Blog Talk Show. So please, if you've got something you'd like to add to that conversation, we're going to start with the Phil Robinson deal there. You're more than welcome to call in, have your say, make your additions to it. But while that's going on, there's so many things that are being ignored. You've got a small group of honest-to-goodness patriots that are paying attention and trying to get this information out. There's still a ton of news going on. a ton of news. But you see, the administration knows that this is that time of year when people's consumption of news goes way down. So it's a good time to dump as much stuff out there as possible because they know people aren't paying attention. They can get it out on the record. They don't have to say that they're hiding it. And it's a done deal. Just like the fact that Obama has now walked back the individual mandate. At this point, it appears to be indefinitely. Really? First of all, he doesn't have the authority to do that. Just like with the employer mandate pushed back a year, he didn't have the authority to do that. He doesn't have the authority to do a lot of things that people keep just letting him do. We live in a democratic republic, a democratic constitutional republic. And for those of you that don't understand what that means, it simply means the democratic part means we get to vote for our representatives. The constitutional part means that we have a founding document that must be adhered to. And the republic part means that we do not have a single person at the top dictating downward to the rest of us. Which means we do not have an emperor, a king, a monarch. We have a president who has responsibilities, expectations, duties, and limitations. It's the role of the legislative bodies, the House and the Senate, to make changes or amendments to laws, like, say, the so-called Patient Protection and Affordable Health Care Act, a.k.a. Obamacare. You know, I just said the O word. According to certain MSNBC hosts, the O word is almost as bad as the it word. Almost as bad. Oh, maybe worse, based on if you heard her little rant, Miss Harris. She is really out there. But anyway, let's get to this topic. Okay, it's very upsetting to me because not only have the Senate Democrats stood in the way of Republican efforts to stop this, but back on the 17th, Chuck-schumer was making some very serious statements about this. Senator Chuck-Schumer, one of our Democrats from New York City, believes that it's time that the U.S. military veterans do their part for America by taking a cut to their retirement benefits. I bet Chucky would never say that to a union member, especially a public service union member. I bet he wouldn't dare. I got news for you, Chuck. Our U.S. military veterans have already done their part for America by standing the line, standing a post, standing on a wall, keeping you, me, and everyone else that lives under the blanket of security that they help to protect safe. That's what they've done. You haven't done that. But Chuck says that they need to take this cut in their retirement because, of course, veterans haven't done enough for the country. Members of Congress, however, should take no such cuts, according to the rather despicable gun control advocating Senator Schumer. The government officials have sacrificed enough. Civilian federal employees have been cut. I think there was a feeling if you're going to cut them further, which was done, that the military retirees should have done about an equal amount. I mean, it's small. This is actually a quote that Chucky said, well, where else, on MSNBC, on Morning Joe. He went on to say, I think Paul Ryan and Patty-Murray looked everywhere that they could to try and find a compromise. Everybody had to take a little. They're going to have to pay a tiny little bit into it, which they never have. Now, Schumer said that, and then he maintained that members of Congress, however, should not be forced to take a pay cut. He said they have already sacrificed since they have not seen a pay raise, quote, in a long time. And then he explained most of them are paying more for health care insurance. Oh my. Quote, we have taken pretty big cuts. Let's tally up the numbers to put things in perspective. The excuse me. The average pension for a retired veteran was $9,669 in 2011. The salary for a U.S. senator is $174,000. Yeah, Chucky, you're right. You've sacrificed enough. My goodness, how could anyone argue with such tremendous logic and obvious truths? In case you don't realize it, this Ryan-Murray deal cuts the military veterans' pensions by $600 billion. But what are we really talking about here? We're talking about a 2-year budget deal hammered out by the House Representatives Budget Committee Chairman, Mr. Paul Ryan, and the Senate's Budget Committee Chairman, Miss Patty. Deal will cut pensions to veterans of our nation's military by $6 billion over the next 10 years. Those who stood in harm's way and served our nation were placed on the chopping block. So that both houses of Congress and the administration will skate by without a government shutdown or any inconvenience of any of the 535 members of Congress seeking re-election. Democrats in the Senate blocked a move by Senate Republicans to block the pension cut. What did pass in its place? Oh, you might wonder. Welfare benefits for illegal immigrants, aka aliens. I don't care if you like the word. If you're not here legally, that is the appropriate term. You cannot be an immigrant if you haven't went through the process. Whatever the lovely and wonderful people that are on the far left side of the political spectrum, the so-called progressives, want to play with the language. They cannot change the meanings of these words. Look them up. You cannot be an immigrant if you haven't went through the legal process. These are illegal aliens. Welfare benefits for these illegal immigrants, according to the article, was what was passed in place of the attempt to keep the military pensions in place. Removing this unbalanced treatment of our military retirees ought to be one of the key actions we should take before this legislation moves forward. In fact, greater savings than this can be achieved by passing a legislative fix recommended by the Inspector General of the U.S. Treasury that would stop the IRS from improperly providing tax credits to illegal aliens. This from Alabama Republican Jeff Sessions. And he said this, announcing his co-sponsorship of Mississippi Republican Senator Roger Wicker's amendment to restore the military retirement benefits. Now, of course, the effort failed to gain enough support. So, by blocking the amendment, the Senate Democrats voted to cut pensions for wounded warriors. Senators in the chamber have many valid ideas for replacing these pension cuts, including the proposal to close the tax welfare loophole for illegal filers, and all deserved a fair and open hearing, but all of these ideas were denied. The 2-year budget deal would ease for 2 years some of the harshest cuts to agency budgets required under the automatic spending curbs, commonly known as sequestration. It would replace $45 billion in scheduled cuts for the 2014 budget year already underway, easing about half of the scheduled cuts. What does that really mean? It means these people had a chance to honor our veterans, honor the people who have stood on the wall, honor the people who deserve more than anyone else in this nation for our government to keep its promises to. There are 2 groups of people our government should never break a promise to. 2 groups of people that should never have to worry that our government will break a promise to. One of them is seniors. The other one is our military veterans. I mean, our military, period, shouldn't have to worry about it, whether you're still active duty or retired. These people shouldn't have to be concerned that our government is going to promise them something and then turn around and not deliver. They even try to convince themselves that it was necessary. They had Murray all over CNN going around saying that the cuts in the pension benefits for some military veterans under the spending plan was part of the compromise to avoid billions in cuts in the defense industry. What they didn't tell you is that those billions of cuts were sent to contractors, many of whom have ties to the lobbyists or to the senators themselves. It's not right and it's not appropriate. Our veterans have done enough, no matter what any Senate Democrat says. But I'm out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. I hope that you have a great rest of the week. Check us out this Sunday and enjoy a little more Christmas music. By the way, this will probably be the last. No, we'll do another broadcast here before Christmas. But anyway, Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Enjoy a little more music as we sign out. Thanks. Have a great night.